أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله ولا أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is going to be the last session for a couple of weeks, and then we'll have one more, then we'll have a break again for Muharram. So we're still unfortunately going to be very early through Dua Atila. I believe we won't have got through the bulk of it, even though it's not a particularly long dua. But when you sit down and start thinking about it, even the small du'as that we recite after namaz, they can have oceans of understanding and discussion within them. So today, I think we just want to, inshallah, try and press on. And I think the last line that we covered last week, if memory serves me right, was the line where the person reading the dua is testifying that and saying and acknowledging that my Lord, yani Allah, the person is acknowledging that Allah is his Lord, his creator, his sustainer, his raziq, his support, is exactly the way Allah has defined himself and mentioned himself earlier on. And this we said that each of these points, when we call Allah Al-Khaliq, Wal-Raziq, and all of this stuff, it's not just nice words that we use. When we say them, we're testifying, we're acknowledging that this is how we appreciate and understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is very important because it's very easy to fall into the trap where something you recite becomes nothing more than just words. I'll give you an example which is appropriate given in the next few days we're going to be witnessing the anniversary of the Shahadat of Muslim bin Aqil, where of course many people wrote to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein from Kufa. And they said, oh, you are our Imam and we give you allegiance and we support you and we want you to remove this despotic regime from us and all of this stuff. And Imam sent Muslim bin Aqil to verify, which is also an important lesson. He sent Muslim bin Aqil to verify that is this claim accurate. Muslim bin Aqil went there. Initially, everyone was happy. There was a huge gathering. Everyone gave their allegiance. But in the end, on the night, in a couple of nights, we will see that Muslim bin Aqil, even as he is leading the prayer, people are dispersing from behind him. And in the end, he is alone walking the streets of Kufa. This is the cousin of Imam Hussein. He's essentially the grandson of Rasulullah. He's the ambassador of Imam Hussein. So it's very easy for people to say something. But the real crux of the matter is when we say, for example, us who live in the time of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, it's very easy for us to say Ajjalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. When we say it, it rolls off our tongue very nicely. It's not a big deal. It's easy. But really, we should understand the gravity of this statement. We are saying, oh Allah, make his return very, very rapid. Ajjalallah means hasten. Make haste in his return. But we need to understand that when Imam comes, all of the games that we play, nothing will stick anymore. Everything will be different. You know, if you are manipulating, if you are doing things which are haram, and of course no one is ma'soom. But if you're deliberately involved in something negative, or you habitually commit some sort of haram or something, I don't know, or if you're not really sincere about your loyalty to Imam al-Mahdi, then when he comes, you're going to be in for a very rude surprise, because we have accurate riwayat about Imam Mahdi which say that when he comes, he will bring an Islam which seems very strange, We have riwayat from Rasulullah which says that Islam will become a stranger and it will come back as a stranger. When you sit down and you go into these riwayat and you start discussing them and understanding them, you'll start to think that actually this Islam that we know is different to the Islam of Imam Mahdi. And again, I know I'm digressing a little bit, but this is an important point. What does that mean? Does that mean there won't be namaz in this new Islam of Imam Mahdi? Of course, no, there will be namaz. Does this mean there won't be any hajj or zakat or khumus or fasting or amr bil ma'ruf and nahi az munkar and all of this? Tawalla tabarra? Is that going to be wiped out and he's going to come with something new? Of course not. It will be the same Islam because Islam has been completed. We have said, Allah Ta'ala has said in Quran, Al-yawm akmaltu lakum dinukum. So this tells us that the rubber stamp, if you like, of Allah has been given to the Islam of Prophet Muhammad. So logic would tell us that the Islam that Imam Mahdi comes back with will be that same Islam of Rasulullah. So what does it mean when we are told that he will bring an Islam that even the ulama, some of them will reject it? Because the understanding of that Islam will be wrong. Just like, for example, when Nabi Isa came, and for the Hebrews, the Jews, they had begun to manipulate the religion of Nabi Musa. One could argue they started manipulating it from the time Nabi Musa went up on the mountain, but we're not going to sit down and discuss Judaic doctrine. Suffice it to say that when Nabi Isa came, who was a Jew, Nabi Isa was not a Christian. The idea of Christianity came after Nabi Isa. When Nabi Isa came, he went to their masjid, the temple of Sulaiman, and what did he see? He saw there was a group of people, there were people inside, there were people doing namaz, or the equivalent of namaz. Bibi Maryam, before Nabi Isa was born, was told to go into the masjid, وَارْكِعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِئِينَ, go and make ruku' with those people who are making ruku'. So of course, people were praying there. That's not, to say that people were not praying. But they were doing things in the masjid which were considered by Nabi Isa and by the original Islam of Nabi Musa, which is the original Islam of Nabi Ibrahim and so on and so forth, were considered to be, you could call them bid'ah, you could call them something negative and away from Islam. What was that? They had turned the stages outside the masjid into a money-changing environment and a money-lending environment where they would charge interest, where they would abuse people. Interest is a very big form of oppression. If you sit down and you analyze what is interest, it's a very dangerous thing because it forces a person to, you borrow £1 from someone, you pay them £1 back. This is normal. But with interest, you pay £1 back, but for the convenience, they keep increasing the amount you have to pay back. If there is a fee for borrowing, this is different. I lend you £1, I charge you 5p for it. Fair enough. This is a contract that two people have done, khalas, it's fine. It's when it's 5%, and that percent keeps increasing. So much so that there are actually accurate riwayat of some of the situation of people in Mecca prior to the advent of Rasulullah, where people would borrow money from certain money lenders because they need to buy some crops. They had a bad harvest, so they need to buy seed so they can actually have a new harvest and afford to look after their family. But one person, there's one example, I can't remember the person's name, but I was reading it just earlier today. One person had borrowed money to buy seed from one money lender. 20 years later, he had been unable to pay the guy back completely, even though the actual amount he had paid back was several times the value. So much so the money lender told him, look, I've been waiting for 20 years, you haven't been able to pay me fully, now you give me your son as a slave. And then a tribal war started because of this situation. Even in contemporary times, right now, all of us must have heard the story of this payday loan company called Wonga, which has been forced to give something like, 300,000 people, wipe off this debt. Why is that? Because these people are lending first with interest, But secondly, they're lending in an irresponsible fashion. They know these people can't pay back, and they're acting like loan sharks. Now, the reason why I gave this example is to say that when Nabi Isa came to the temple of Sulaiman, the people inside there, they thought they were following Judaism. The people who were doing the money changing, they thought they were following Judaism. They didn't think they were actively damaging Judaism because the understanding had been eroded over so many generations. This is also the same, similar to what is meant when we are told Imam Mahdi, when he comes, he will come with an Islam that we will think is very strange. It doesn't make any sense. Because he will tell us things that we will think, of course, no, we don't do this. We don't act like this. We don't act like this. We don't operate like this. Whereas actually, if you go back to the original source material, we probably should be acting like that. We probably should be kind to our neighbors. We should probably be compassionate amongst each other, help each other. If someone has a problem, we should go and assist them. Yeah, we shouldn't the examples are plentiful. We don't need to go into them, but this is the idea. This is what it means. And what we were saying, the reason why we got to this point was that when we say anything, we need to make sure we're saying it with responsibility. Because like I said last week, every breath we take is going to be held accountable to us. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. Mithqal dharratin means a fraction of an atom's weight. Be it good or be it bad, they will receive the appropriate reward or retribution for that given activity, whatever the activity is. So moving on, the line after says that we have said that I give witness, I testify that to my Lord, limun'ibi, to my Master, limun'imi, and to my Creator, wa khaliqi, wa raziqi, wa mukrimi, kama shahida lidhatih. In the same way I testify to him as he testifies about him. And in that sentence only, I'm acknowledging that he is my Rabb, he is my Creator, my Sustainer, my Supporter, etc. I then continue and say, وَشَهِدَتْ لَهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَأُولِي الْعِلْمِ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ. And I also bear witness that his angels testify to this also, meaning I'm acknowledging the angels, وَأُولِي الْعِلْمِ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ, and those people who have wisdom from those who are his slaves. So you've got multiple groupings that are being narrowed. You have humanity, you have Muslims, you have mu'mins, you then have his ibad, those people who genuinely worship him, and even inside that, even narrower, ulil ilm, those people who hold wisdom. This doesn't mean only ulama. This is a common misconception. It doesn't just mean people who wear clothes like this. Anyone has wisdom. Wisdom is what? You know something and you act upon it. One interesting story that comes to mind is a lesson that I heard from one of the students of Ayatollah Bahjat, who passed away recently. He was well known to be a very senior arif and alim of akhlaq and also a marja. He used to tell his students that some of his students, they would come to him and say, Maulana, please teach us something special. And we're studying this book and we're studying this book and so on. And he'd turn around to them and say that you're studying, one of the books they said that they were studying was Wasail al-Shia. Wasail al-Shia is one of the major books of hadith that we have. And Aghay Bahjat would say to the students that, look, you're studying Wasail al-Shia, that's very nice. What have you benefited from it? Oh, we've studied X chapter, B chapter, C chapter, so on. He said, what you should do, the way you should study Wasail al-Shia, is you start from wherever, you choose a point you're going to start from, you pick one hadith, and not only do you understand it, you implement that hadith within your day-to-day existence. Once you've achieved that, you can then move on to hadith number 2 and hadith number 3 and so on and so forth. So basically, make sure that when you study it, these are the words of the Imam, you need to be serious about it. If the Imam is saying you should, for example, I don't know, before you do wudu, for example, gargle 3 times, trivial example, right? Even though it's mustahab, it's not wajib, but if the Imam is saying it inside the book and you're learning this book and you're studying this book, Make a point of doing that 3 gargle. And once you've put that into practice, then go on to hadith 2, which might talk about anything, how you discuss with your neighbor, with your, the person who lives next door to you, how you do this, how you do that, whatever. So the ulil ilm are anyone who knows something about Islam. Masalan, everyone, even if they're not, Hawza student or anything, they know the ahkam shari. They know the ahkam of sharia, the tawzil masail that they have to follow. This is normal for everyone. A person of wisdom is someone who has his risala amaliyah. Doesn't mean he has to memorize everything, but he knows the rulings that he needs or she needs for their day-to-day lives. So if they're in a position, for example, they're in a position at work, and the guys at work say, oh, come on, it's the end of the year or whatever, let's go to the such and such place to celebrate. Like, for example, the Christmas party that most people will have information about, for their various workplaces. We need to be very careful about things like this, because if we get caught up, of course, we care about the people we work for, we like them, they're our friends, this is lovely. But we have certain concepts and certain ideas that we must adhere to. And so we have to very politely work with the guys at work and say, look, I'm not going to be able to come to the Christmas party because it's something, you'll have alcohol and all of this, and it's pre-mixing, and it's not something that I am comfortable with. My religion doesn't particularly like it, and I'd rather not do it. But, here you go, my family and myself, we've bought you a cake, or we've bought you a gift, a book voucher, or whatever, I don't know. You give them something, and everyone is happy, right? These little things, you see, what happens sometimes, and this happens a lot more with some of our more younger and some of our more zealous brothers from other schools of thought. I've seen less of this from our school of thought, is that they become very confrontational with non-Muslims. They say, oh, brother, you can't go there. They sell alcohol. They do this. They do that. So we know this. I'm not saying go and do it. I'm saying there's a way to deal with people. There is a style. Even in the Quran, when we're told to discuss with people, we are told, first of all, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbik bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana." Again, that word hikmah comes in, right? That word wisdom comes back in. You have to be wary of it. You have to think. You have to understand, right? وَمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. Maw'izat al-hasana is normally translated as good words. Good words doesn't do it justice. It's actually appropriate words. Because in every situation, you need to, if I'm going to the United Nations and I'm going to speak to Mr. Ban Ki-moon, I need to speak to him in a particular way. There is a certain protocol I have to adhere to. I have to call him Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, blah, 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 blah. Even though I have no respect for him in that way. But there is a protocol I have to observe. When I'm speaking to my elders, I have to be polite with them. When I'm speaking to my youngers, I have a different protocol, but I still have to be polite. Everything has an appropriate set of terminology, linguistically, that we must adhere to. And Islamically even, we have to make sure that we adhere to this. If we're dealing with our non-Muslim friends, we need to not talk to them in a way and discuss with them in a way where they become repulsed by Islam and they begin to have negative thoughts about Islam. Because this is a disaster. Even if someone doesn't follow Islam, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. Because at the end of the day, we know that the door of Hidayah is open till the last breath. Someone can change and accept Allah, and at the last point. And if we are responsible for someone developing enmity towards Islam, then we have a lot of things to answer for. If we've been brutal with people, Masalan, you take the example of these idiots from this so-called Islamic State, Daesh. They profess to follow Islam, they profess to give this idea of we want to make Islamic State. And yet all they do is harm people, they abuse people, they rape people, they destroy things. The Taliban before them used to destroy cultural items. Leave that the Taliban and ISIS are destroying Shia monuments and even Sunni monuments and maqamat of people like Ammar Yasir, of Habib ibn Madahir. Leave all of that. The the fact that they kill people, the fact that they harm people, the way they look, the way they present themselves, this is not going to make someone attracted to Islam, except the people who are crazies. Only the crazies will. We don't want the crazies. Thank you very much. We don't need crazies. First we help the crazies and then we will, bring them. But right now we don't want crazies. So if we act in a fashion as Muslims which damages Islam, this is one of the biggest sins. This is one of the biggest sins, because what you're doing is, through your activity, you're closing that door of rahmah from Allah, artificially closing the door to someone else. Your activity will block someone from even considering Islam. This is very important. These are important ideas to understand. Salawat. So again, this idea of the angels bear witness, and the people of wisdom, who are the abid, the followers, min ibadih, the ones who genuinely follow him. This is a small group. And these are the people who are also bearing witness, I'm saying, which means I recognize those people as well. Normally when we discuss these people, we're talking, yes, of normal people as well, but also ulama, also Ahlul Bayt, this type of thing. And what am I testifying to? What am I committing myself to? بأنه لا إله إلا هو ذو النعم والإحسان والكرم والامتنان قادر الأزلي عالم أبدي حي عبدي موجود سرمدي سميع بصير مريد كارح مدرك صمدي. This is now a section where we're saying certain things about Allah. You're repeating the sifat of Allah. That first of all, He is Dhu Ni'ami wal Ihsan, that He is the owner of favors and goodness, of ni'mat, of benefits, of blessings, blessings and favors, of generosity and imtinan, blessings, another word, type of blessings. He's the eternal and most powerful, most qadir, he is the eternal alim, meaning that his knowledge is eternal, his presence is eternal. He's living, his existence is eternal, it's beyond other existences. Now when we repeat these words, and we repeat all of these with understanding, it should put us into a state where we begin to understand that actually, who is this Allah? This Allah who I worship, I pray to, He's not some random entity who one day some man in the desert decided to create a name. This Allah has got sifat, His proof, the proof for His existence is all over us. We need to begin to understand these type of things at a deeper level. Because then we start saying that His existence is eternal, it's forever. He's always existed, He will always exist, and He has always existed. He is the one who hears everything and He sees everything. And He is the one who can discriminate, and He knows how to discriminate, any positive discrimination. He can discern, discriminate is the wrong word. He can discern the situation. He's aware and He is fully independent, meaning that there is no one that interferes with His opinion on a given thing, if you like. Then I turn around and I say, يستحق هذه الصفات وهو على ما هو عليه في عز صفاته. This means that He is giving Him these attributes, giving Him these sifat, this idea of eternal existence, eternal knowledge, eternal life, etc., etc. I'm saying that He's worthy of this. Now, when I say this, Again, I know I keep repeating this, but it shouldn't just be words. It should be a sense of understanding, a sense of ma'rifah, that actually my Lord is this entity who has these sifat. And these sifat are his right because he carries all of them. He has all of these sifat. And indeed, you go on and you say that, but in reality, while I've mentioned these sifat, even they are but a drop in the ocean of what he actually is. So, when you're talking about him, it's not, words are not enough to be able to do him justice. We then go say, كان قوي قبل وجود القدرة والقوة, that he was almighty and powerful before the creation, before the existence of might and power. So even before there was this condition called power, he was already powerful. He carried that condition prior to creating it, prior to the existence of it. Meaning that the existence of that creation was because of, out of almost as an honor to him. But again, when we're discussing like this, we have to understand one thing. And I've said this before, I'll probably say it again. Allah Ta'ala does not operate within time and space like us. When we are discussing these type of ideas with him, and when we're talking about these sort of ideas, when we recite Dua Joshan Kabir, for example, Joshan Saghir, other dua, we're not talking about an Allah who is limited by time and space as we are. When we turn around and say that he was almighty before the creation of might and power, this indicates the passage of time, meaning there was a time where he was almighty, but actually he didn't know it because almighty was not created, or might or power was not created. One could understand it that way. But because Allah operates outside of time and space, and time and space are merely creations of Allah, designed for our benefit, so that we can understand things, because we have been built and designed to require this type of frame of reference. Who knows, Allah might have other creation who don't require this frame of reference. And indeed we know the angels, while they operate within time and space, they operate within a different time and space. We have the jinn, who operate again in a slightly different fashion. But we're not going to get into a discussion about these things. But we need to understand that when we say that he was almighty before, it's not a time-based before. It's a very difficult idea to explain, inshallah. If you don't understand it, come and speak to me afterwards, and I'll try and find a better way if I can. Again, we turn around and we say, وَكَانَ عَلِيمًا قَبْلَ الْإِيجَادِ الْعِلْمِ وَالْعِلَّةِ, that he was wise, yani he possessed knowledge, and he possessed absolute knowledge before the concept of knowledge and reason was brought about. This also actually tells us something quite interesting, that knowledge and reason, ilm and illah, are actually required together. You can't have knowledge without reason. Because if you have knowledge without reason, you have something which is half-baked. Sometimes some people have this idea of, I have read XYZ book of hadith, right? And they assume that every hadith in there, including hadiths about onions, are accurate. This is because they haven't understood what the reason is, what the illah is, what the context is, if you like, of a given point. They haven't understood the science of discerning whether this is valid or invalid. And so they end up getting confused. So even in these little niceties and these little nuances of the dua, he was wise, يعني وَكَانَ عَلِيمًا قَبْلَ إِيجَادِ الْعِلْمِ وَالْعِلَّةِ, that before the existence, ijad, before the foundation of knowledge and reason. If knowledge and reason were not connected at the hip, if you like, it would have said very simply that he was the most knowledgeable, he had all knowledge before the creation or before the inception of knowledge. Why before the inception of knowledge and reason? These little niceties, they require reflection, they require thought. Then we say, لم ي... لم ل... لم يزل سلطانا إذ لا مملكة والأمال. This means that he had absolute authority, he had absolute dominion, absolute power over everything, even when conceptually there was no kingdom, there was no possession, there was nothing to have power over. And this, again, we can sit down, we can discuss this for many hours, just that phrase, because this tells us that Allah's authority is a different form of authority from the authority we understand in any given scenario. It is not the authority of, for example, the president of a center, or the president or prime minister of a country, or even Secretary General of the United Nations, or anything, or even the king who claims that he is the custodian of the so-called two holy places. His authority is in a level which is very different to that. Because his authority, it's like, for example, this real authority is wilaya. Because we know the idea of wilaya, of governance. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam Imam Ali was the wali of Allah, is the wali of Allah. Whether he was accepted as the imam and the khalif of the people, or whether he was not accepted, it didn't change the fact that he is the wali of Allah, and that he is the holder of the wilaya from Allah after Rasulullah. Whether someone accepts him, doesn't accept him, the sun is out, the sun is not, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. His wilaya is complete. The same way we have the idea of wilayat al-faqih, we have the idea of marja'iyya. If someone has reached these levels, whether we accept them, whether Shabir sitting here says, oh, XYZ marja or XYZ wali faqih is not, makes no difference. Doesn't change the fact. The same way, Allah's authority is of a type that whether someone accepts Allah's authority or rejects Allah's authority doesn't change anything. That authority is there. Their existence is a manifestation of that authority, whether they accept it or whether they do not accept it. And then we say, وَلَمْ يَزَلْ سُبْحَانًا عَلَى جَمِيعِ الْأَحْوَالِ. And for him is all of the subhan, all of the blessings, all of the praises in every situation, in all circumstances. This is why you'll find that some ulama, they say constantly, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. Whatever is the situation, good, bad, ugly, anything, Alhamdulillah. When you see the real mujahideen, when you see the real people, I'm talking about the real resistance people, like the people who are fighting Daesh in Iraq, the people who are imprisoned in Bahrain, the people in Lebanon who are making resistance against Israel and against Daesh, the people in Syria who are defending Sayyidah Zainab and all of these places and defending Syria against, when these people, when they speak, you will see that many times they say Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. That Alhamdulillah in every situation, regardless of the situation. Bombs are falling, the sky is falling, people are blowing up, all of this crazy stuff is happening, Alhamdulillah. Because this is an understanding, it's a level of understanding. It's not just a cultural thing where some people, they just say it. Okay, for some people it might just be a cultural thing, but for most of the people, the ones who understand, for them when they say, Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal, all praises belongs to Allah, under every situation, these are people who understand that all of these events happening, in reality, it's nothing. Because at the end of the day, we know that Allah is Allah. His dominion, His authority is there regardless. And His plan will be the successful plan. We also accept that when someone is killed unjustly, this person gets what we could call a green card to the good life, if you like, on the next day, right? When someone is murdered or someone dies a believer, someone is martyred, This person has got a green card. It's something we should be envious of in reality. In fact, some point in the future, I'll tell you stories about people who really they're envious of their brothers who have become shaheed, especially the guys, some of the brothers from the resistance in Lebanon. They are envious that my brother, he became shaheed. And I didn't get the chance. Clearly, I must have done something wrong. I didn't have that tawfiq to be able to get it. And I'm praying that Allah opens that door again so I get that opportunity. This is a state of mind. Some people would say this is a very negative, a very sort of fanatical state of mind. Some people would argue that. But actually, it's the most moderate and the most simplest and the most refined state of mind. Because in reality, we as humanity, we've become very arrogant. We think we control our environment. And in the Quran, Allah tells us, يا معشر الجن والإنس إذا انتطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. That, O assembly of jinn and man, you want to traverse the outer regions of the universe. This is a metaphor for you want to do all of these huge things. Okay, do. But there are red lines. You won't be able to cross beyond certain lines without authority. Not like what the Saudis said when they said, لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. So they sent Prince Sultan up to the NASA space station, thinking, okay, Sultan can go. This is true. This is what the Saudis did. That's why they sent Prince Sultan to the space station as a reply to this. This is the nature of the Takfiri Wahhabis that are occupying Arabia and Hijaz. We then say, وَبَقَاؤُهُ بَعْدَ الْبَعْدِ مِنْ غَيْرِ انْتِقَالٍ. That he is eternal after the end and before the beginning. So the word eternal doesn't do his eternity justice. Because in our minds, even in our limited understanding, in the constructs that we're forced to live within, eternity also signifies the passage of time, meaning that there was a beginning, but it will always be there. But these words all indicate time in some way. What the dua is trying to say, that his eternity is beyond time. There has never been, there will never be a situation where there is no Allah. If Allah ceases to exist, for example, then everything ceases to exist because he has created everything. So if the creator of time stops, if that is even possible and logically sane, which I don't believe it is, but assume if this happened, then nothing could exist, would exist, will exist. In all of the tenses, past, present, future, the existence falls away. And yes, you can start going into discussions and start discussing quantum mechanics and string theory and all of this stuff, but we're not going to do that. It's not what this is about. We then continue, and I'm going to just do the next couple, and then we finish, inshallah. وَلَا زَوَالٍ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْأَوَّلِ وَالْآخِرِ مُسْتَغْنٍ فِي الْبَاطِنِ وَالظَّاهِرِ. This means that he has no needs. He doesn't need anything. There's no one who can improve him or assist him in that way. And this is in the beginning and in the end. And again, this is like a re-emphasis that he has never needed anything. He is completely the only true entity that is really independent. And he's able, he has ability, and he is completely free from dependence in any shape, way, or form in himself. And this dependence is either, it could be a physical dependence, a zahir dependence, or a batin dependence. He has no dependence at all in that way. What's very interesting is if you look at each of these, this is defining Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or trying to define Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though we know he defies definition. But what it is defining by its negative is the idea of what we are. If Allah was always in existence, we were never in existence except through His mercy, right? If Allah is completely able and He is free from any dependence, internal or external, we are actually not able. We can't do anything without His tawfiq, and we are completely dependent on Him internally or externally. And we can give 1,000 examples. There's no point because it's a very simple statement. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I think at this point we'll finish because the next few bits there's a lot there, and I don't want to start something which then we'll pause for 2 weeks and then we'll come. So what we'll do is we'll stop at that ayah, where that line, if you like, and inshallah from the next from 2 weeks time we'll continue. And even in 2 weeks time we're not going to, maybe we'll get to the part of Dua Adila where he's discussing the idea of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the idea of Ghadir and who is Amir al-Mu'mineen. And it's interesting for us to have this in a dua where Allah is talking about Rasulullah and saying that Rasulullah pointed out to you his successor, this is Ali, هذا علي إليه, and he told them that this is Ali who is for you. He's not these idiots who turn around and say, oh, on Ghadir he said wali. Wali means friend. But look, you don't stop people in the middle of a desert in the scorching heat just to tell them, by the way, this is my mate, this is my friend. Rasulullah was not someone like that. He understands what the heat is. He understands taking all the saddles off. It's a crazy thing to say that it's just a friend. The reason they're stopping in the desert, the reason why they're saying, why Rasulullah is saying that this is the person after me, Ali, is so that the people don't become lost. And the irony is that some of the people who went against Imam Ali, they were there. They were at the event. And even went to him after the event and said, Bakhin, Bakhin, Ya Abul Hassan. Means congratulations, so much congratulations, Ya Abul Hassan. And at the end of it, Rasulullah closes his eyes and khalas. All, as they say, all bets are off. And these are interesting ideas. I don't normally discuss these ideas. But sometimes it's necessary for us to understand what this is about. And in reality, of course, this is a historical event. It happened. And one of the reasons why we have idiots like Daesh professing to be Muslim is because of the events that happened previously. Because Islam was manipulated in the past, confused. You had a group called Khawarij generated, which were responsible for killing Amir al-Mu'mineen, of course. And their children became the Wahhabi cult, which is occupying Saudi. Because if you look at the doctrines, it's very simple. Even though the Wahhabis have a lot more nifaq in them than the Khawarij did. So in a way, one could argue that the Khawarij were actually more sincere. Because the Khawarij, for all of their faults, they actually believed in what they said. When they said, La hukm illa lillah, there is no governance except for Allah, even Amir al-Mu'mineen says in Nahj Balagha that they're right. It's true there is no governance except from Allah. They just don't understand it properly. And that's why they're becoming gumrah, that's why they're becoming lost. But the takfiris, of course they know the reality. And in case people are not aware, it's important to note that these takfiris in Istanbul, they have just opened an embassy. Daesh, the so-called Islamic State, has opened an embassy in Istanbul. They are living in mansions. They are driving around in big cars, like I said at the beginning. These are people who say one thing, we want to go back to the Islam of 1400 years ago. Okay, then why are you driving around in a 2014 car, being a big man? Having all of these big houses. What is wrong with you? Say what you are. Don't act like Abu Sufyan and pretend that you're someone very sweet and nice. If you're a follower of Muawiyah and Yazid and all of these people, ahlan wa sahlan, say, we know where you are, khalas. Don't lie. But of course, these are ashab of shaitan. They're hizb shaitan. And what does shaitan do? لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I will confuse and delude them. What is his key weapon? The tongue. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect Islam and Muslims from the plots and schemes of Shaitan and his associates. Ya Allah, we ask you to remove the corruption of Daesh and of the Wahhabi cult and all those who are sympathetic towards them. Ya Allah, we ask you to help Islam and all of the Muslims and all of the oppressed people across the world, and to remove oppression and injustice from this world and replace it with justice and equity, with the return of our Master Imam Mahdi Ajallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And Ya Allah, please make us from amongst his sincere followers and those people who are genuinely a source of joy to him, and not from those people who upset him or make him sad. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect all of the righteous maraji', and especially the leader Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Al-Fatiha.